Hi everyone. In today's video, I will lay out the important differences between a qualitative and a quantitative research design. If you go and look into past research, you may find that there are many more study designs in quantitative research than in qualitative. So I will still lay out the differences between each so that you are prepared to undertake the journey if you choose any one of them for your research. So I'll begin with quantitative studies. Quantitative studies are more specific, well structured, they have been tested for validity and reliability, and you will find that they are explicitly defined and recognized. I will give you an example of what I mean by structured and what I mean by specific and well structured. In comparison to quantitative, qualitative study designs do not have the attributes that I have listed in quantitative, or they have it to a lesser degree. They are less specific, less precise, and do not have the same structural depth. Now let's understand what I mean by structured and unstructured. Now, differences in philosophical perspectives in each paradigm combined with the aims of the study to a large extent will determine the focus, approach, and mode of inquiry, which in turn will determine the structural aspects of a study design. The main focus in qualitative research is to understand, explain, explore, discover, and clarify situations. Feelings, perceptions, attitudes, values, beliefs, and experiences, either of a group of people, most likely of a group of people. The study designs in qualitative research are therefore often based on deductive rather than inductive logic. They are flexible and emergent in nature and are often non-linear and non-sequential in their operationalization. The study designs mainly entail the selection of people from whom the information through an open frame of inquiry is explored and gathered. The parameters of the scope of a study and information gathering methods and processes are often flexible and evolving. Hence, most qualitative designs are not as structured and sequential as quantitative. On the other hand, in quantitative research, the measurement and classification requirements of the information that is gathered demand that study designs are more structured, rigid, fixed, and predetermined in their use to determine accuracy in measurement and classification. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, in quantitative, we lay out the plan of data collection. Right from the research question, we know what research question we are going to answer and how we are going to be collecting data to answer that research question. So we have clarity and distinction. However, in qualitative, our data might reveal some themes or some concepts or some variables that was not originally in the plan. The data reveals it, and that's why qualitative is called an unstructured research, or it is called a non-linear research, because sometimes the data, the values, the beliefs, the perceptions of the people give us certain line of thought, or it helps us to identify certain variables which were not originally identified. So in qualitative studies, the distinction between study designs and methods of data collection is far less clear. In qualitative research, there is an overlap between the two. Some designs are basically methods of data collection. So for example, in-depth interviewing is a design as well as a method of data collection. So is participant observation, so is oral history. Quantitative study designs have more clarity and distinction between designs and methods of data collection. We are very clear as to the research question and what kind of data we need to collect and how we are going to collect that data to answer that research question, whether it is surveys, whether it is an experiment, whether it's a mathematical equation or something like that. We know exactly what is it that is going to help us answer the research question. So the clarity is more between the design and the data collection method. One of the most distinguishing features of qualitative research is the adherence to the concept of respondent concordance, whereby you as the researcher will make every effort to seek agreement of your respondents with your interpretation, presentation of the situations, experiences, perception, and conclusion. That means when you are collecting data as a researcher from your respondents, whatever the respondents say, you will make a note of it and then clarify that this is what they meant. That interpretation has to be in concordance, means in agreement with the respondent. So whatever the respondent says and means, you have to make sure that you understand it correctly and then you confirm it with the respondent. In quantitative research, respondent concordance or seeking agreement with the respondent does not occupy an important place. Sometimes it is assumed to be achieved by circulating or sharing the findings with those participating in the study. So in quantitative research, we often give options to our respondents as to whether they would like to have access to the study or the publication once it's published or the research data, and we do so for those respondents who would like to receive that data. But during data collection, we don't seek any kind of agreement with the respondents, because quantitative surveys or quantitative is not where the researcher is deeply involved. The researcher may be a bit distant from the data collection process. Somebody else might collect the data due to ethical issues. Whereas in qualitative research, the researcher is an integral part of the data collection process. So the power gap between the researcher and the study population in qualitative research is far smaller than in quantitative research because of the informality in structure and situation in which the data is collected. So the researcher is deeply involved in qualitative research. In quantitative, not so much. In quantitative research, enough detail about a study design is provided for it to be replicated for verification and reassurance. However, in qualitative research, little attention is paid to study designs or other structural aspects of the study. Therefore, replication of a study in qualitative research becomes almost impossible. This leads to the inability of the design to produce findings that can then be replicated. However, findings through quantitative study design can be replicated and retested, whereas this cannot be easily done by using qualitative study design. Like I've explained before, once you have designed a research for qualitative study, once you collect the data, that design may be modified based on the data that you collect. That data often leads the researcher to the direction that the researcher will then investigate. However, in quantitative, we lay out everything from beforehand, and then our data reveals whether our research hypothesis was proved or not proved. Another difference in the design in qualitative and quantitative study is the possibility of introducing researcher bias. Now, as you have understood from before, that in qualitative data collection, the researcher becomes a very integral part of the data collection process. So because of this, or because of flexibility and lack of control, it is more difficult to check researcher bias in qualitative studies. Whereas in quantitative, because the researcher has a power gap from the respondents, he's distant or she's distant, someone else might also collect the data for ethical reasons, researcher bias is often kept in check. Also because qualitative is often guided by the researcher's beliefs, values, perceptions, so it becomes a bit difficult for the researcher to keep that in check. You must do so, you must be completely objective and unbiased, but it becomes a bit challenging compared to quantitative, which is normally guided by literature review. Finally, I must say that the study design in each paradigm are appropriate for finding different things. Study designs in qualitative research are more appropriate for exploring the variation and diversity in any aspect of social life. Whereas in quantitative research, they are more suited to finding out the extent of this variation and diversity. So, for example, if your interest is in studying values, beliefs, understanding, perceptions, meanings, then qualitative design are more appropriate as they will provide that flexibility. However, if you want to measure the magnitude of the variation, for example, how many people have a particular value or belief, the quantitative design becomes more appropriate. So let's take an example. You want to know if people are happy with the speed limits that have been imposed on the road highways. Why they are happy, why they are not happy. So that is something that we can explore through qualitative. However, you want to know how many people are satisfied or how many people are dissatisfied or if there is a correlation between people satisfaction and the accidents, then you can use quantitative research. So for good quantitative research, it is important that you combine quantitative skills with qualitative ones when ascertaining the nature and extent of diversity and variations in a phenomena. So it is up to you based on your research question and your focus as to which method you may employ. There are advantages and disadvantages with each, and make sure that you have thorough knowledge of both before you really delve into one, and seek your research, your advisors, your supervisor's advice as well, to make sure that you are on the correct path before it's too late. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye for now.